everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive into a story that's seriously going to get us thinking about resilience.
Definitely.
So we're cracking open Don't Give Up, Don't Give In by Louis Zamperini.
Great choice.
Yeah, this really jumped out at me. And you know, the title alone, it's like a life motto. But then you look at Zamperini's life, Olympic runner, POW in World War II.
Survived on a raft for over a month, battling storms, sharks, the whole 9 yards.
Seriously, the man knew a thing or two about not giving up. So from those experiences, what kind of wisdom did he glean? What did he learn?
Well, what strikes me is that Zamperini doesn't just preach resilience. He lays out like a blueprint.
Ooh, I like that, a blueprint.
Yeah, and it's drawn directly from his own experiences, which were incredible but often brutal.
Right. It's one thing to talk about resilience from, your comfy armchair, but he lived it. He earned those lessons the hard way.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that really jumps out, at least for me, is this theme of forgiveness. He's got this quote, "If you hate somebody, you're not hurting the person you hate. You're hurting yourself. Forgiveness is healing."
Powerful words.
Right. Coming from anyone, that's a powerful statement, but from a former POW.
It takes on a whole other level of meaning.
Exactly. It makes you really stop and think.
And for Zamperini, forgiveness wasn't just some theoretical idea. He'd seen firsthand how clinging to anger, even towards his captors, could eat a person alive.
He actually says in the book, "During the 2+ years I lived in Japanese prisoner of war camps, I noticed that the soldiers who suffered the most were the ones who wouldn't accept their situations."
That's a heavy one.
It is, isn't it? Really makes you think about how we deal with, the tough stuff in our own lives.
It is about acceptance, and it's a critical distinction to make, because acceptance isn't about saying what happened was okay. It's not about condoning it.
It's more about acknowledging reality.
Exactly. Acknowledging your reality so you can then focus on what you can control, your reactions, thoughts, how you choose to move forward.
So it's like by releasing that anger, that resentment, you free up space for something else.
Yes. And that something else might be hope. It might be a sense of purpose, even peace. Finding peace amidst chaos.
There's that quote too, "Acceptance creates cheerfulness, which in turn creates contentment."
Right. It's not about being happy the bad thing happened, but choosing how you move through it. Have you ever noticed this in your own life, where holding on to anger really just hurt you more?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure many of us listening have been there. But you know what I appreciate about Zamperini is that he doesn't just tell us what to do. He gives us the how.
The practical steps.
Yes,
Yeah.
he had this very practical approach to overcoming challenges.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How so?
Well, at its core, it was all about breaking things down.
Breaking things down.
Yeah, like he says, rather than try to take on the whole predicament at once, I broke it down to smaller tasks. I followed my training a step at a time. I didn't freak out.
It makes sense, right? Instead of being overwhelmed by the big picture.
You focus on what you can actually tackle right now.
And what I find brilliant about that is that it applies to pretty much any challenge. I mean, we're not talking about just life or death situations here.
No, not at all.
Could be anything. Lost at sea, facing a mountain of work, trying to get through your to-do list.
We're just trying to clean your house.
Exactly. That feeling of being overwhelmed. Break it down. Smaller, more manageable pieces.
I find that so helpful in my own life, honestly.
Yeah.
Whether it's a work deadline or even something like finally tackling, that disastrous closet I've been ignoring.
We've all been there.
Oh, totally. But if I think about the whole thing, I freeze up, I'm paralyzed. But if I tell myself, okay, today I'm just going to organize that one shelf, suddenly it feels doable.
It feels less daunting, and you start to build momentum.
Yes, and that feeling of accomplishment, even from a small win, it really does help.
Absolutely. It shifts your perspective, gives you the energy to keep going. And, Zamperini talks about this too. He highlights maintaining a positive attitude and keeping the mind active.
It's not just about the task itself, but your mental state while you're doing it.
Exactly.
I love that. It's like you've got to find those little wins along the way to keep your spirits up.
Absolutely.
Sometimes even just sorting through a sock drawer feels like a major victory.
It all counts. Even those small victories can be a game changer. And, that ties into another theme that really resonated with me, the power of hope.
Oh, absolutely.
He says, you must have hope. It rejuvenates your whole being. The ability to envision the road to successful completion is what keeps you alive. And that's huge, right? Even when things seem bleak, even when the odds feel stacked against you.
Hope is that little flicker of possibility that keeps you going.
Exactly. And it's
Yeah.
not just some feel-good notion. There's actually research showing that hope directly influences our actions.
Really? Tell me more about that.
Well, people who have hope, they tend to set bigger goals. They're more persistent even when they face setbacks.
Mm.
And they're more likely to find creative solutions to problems.
So it's not passive. Hope fuels action.
Exactly. It's the engine, not just the fuel.
I love that analogy. Now, another thing that really stood out to me was this idea of having a code of ethics. Why do you think that was so important to Zamperini, especially in a POW camp?
Well, imagine this for a second. You're stripped of everything, your freedom, your possessions, your sense of safety, everything you rely on.
It's almost unimaginable.
Yeah. So what's left? What do you hold on to?
Your values, maybe? Your sense of self?
Exactly. Your values become your anchor. And in a POW camp, a code of ethics wasn't just about personal morality. It was about clinging to humanity, to community, even amidst unimaginable cruelty.
Wow.
It gave them something to strive for, a reason to keep going, even when things were at their darkest.
That shared sense of purpose, even in that kind of darkness, it's incredible to think about.
It really is. And it makes you consider your own guiding principles, doesn't it? What are those things that guide you through tough choices? What's important to you, even when it's hard?
It's such a powerful question, and it's something I think we all grapple with.
Absolutely. Our values, they aren't just abstract ideas, you know? They shape how we see the world, how we interpret things that happen to us, even how we bounce back from adversity.
And speaking of seeing things differently, Zamperini talks about the importance of taking the long view.
The long view, huh?
Yeah, and I think this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
So he writes, sometimes what we see as a loss turns out in the end to be a gain, and sometimes a gain is a loss. I try not to be too swift to pass judgment on any situation, preferring instead to be patient and take the long view, because I believe that in the end, all things work together for good.
Interesting. It's easy to get caught up in the moment, right? To label something as good or bad just based on how it makes us feel right then.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need that distance, that time to see the bigger picture.
Exactly. And I think Zamperini's life is a perfect example of that.
In what way?
Well, he went through so much, but it was often those experiences that seemed like the biggest setbacks, the most difficult challenges.
That led to unexpected opportunities.
Exactly. Things he could have never predicted or planned for. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What feels like a wrong turn might actually be putting you on a path towards something you'd never have imagined otherwise.
There's definitely something to be said for that. It's like, rather than getting stuck in the why me of it all.
You try to approach it with a bit more of that, okay, what now energy.
Love that. And, I think this is where Zamperini's emphasis on a code of ethics becomes even more relevant.
How so?
Because when we're facing those what now moments, when everything feels uncertain, it's our values that can act as our compass.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's not about having all the answers, right?
Really?
It's about having that framework to help us find them.
I like that, a framework for finding answers. And it's interesting because when I think about the code of ethics that Zamperini lived by, it wasn't just about these big, grand gestures. It was woven into his everyday actions, even in the POW camp.
Give me an example.
Well, like the summary mentions how he would sneak extra rations to weaker prisoners, even though it meant risking punishment himself.
Wow. So even in that environment, with so little to give.
He found ways to live by his code, to prioritize things like compassion and empathy.
That's remarkable.
It is.
Yeah.
And it really highlights how our values, they aren't just these lofty ideals. They're meant to guide our actions every single day.
Absolutely. And I think that's what made them such a source of strength for him. It wasn't just about survival. It was about living with purpose, with integrity, even in the most challenging circumstances.
It's almost like having that clear sense of who you are, what you stand for. It makes you more resilient.
I think that's a powerful insight. Because it's not about having a strong moral compass magically making all the challenges disappear. It's about having something solid to hold on to when everything else feels like it's falling apart.
Which can be incredibly grounding, especially when you're dealing with all the curveballs life throws your way, as we were talking about earlier.
It all ties together, doesn't it? The long view, the acceptance, the hope, this code of ethics. They're all part of what makes us resilient. And, while Zamperini's story is extraordinary, the things he embodies, those principles, they're universal.
He's giving us a roadmap, in a way. for navigating those challenges that we all face, from the everyday stuff to the really big life-altering events.
And I think what's so inspiring is that he's not presenting himself as some sort of superhuman figure, you know?
Right, and he's very open about his struggles.
Exactly. The moments of doubt, the times he wanted to give up, it makes his resilience feel attainable, like something we can all cultivate within ourselves.
I completely agree. It's incredibly encouraging because at the end of the day, resilience isn't about being fearless, about never stumbling. It's about getting back up, dusting yourself off, and finding a way to keep moving forward, even when it's hard.
So true. And sometimes all it takes is a little bit of inspiration, a little guidance to help us remember that we've got this.
And having a little bit of Zamperini's wisdom in our back pocket, well, that certainly can't hurt, right?
Not at all. Now, as we begin to wrap up this part of our deep dive into Don't Give Up, Don't Give In by Louis Zamperini.
Already, it feels like we've just scratched the surface.
I know, right? Time flies when you're unpacking a lifetime's worth of wisdom. But don't worry, we've got more to uncover. We've covered a lot of ground. Forgiveness, acceptance, the power of breaking down challenges, the importance of holding on to hope.
It's a lot to process.
It is. But there's one thing that really distinguishes Zamperini's story, something we're going to explore further. That unwavering commitment he had to his code of ethics. This code, as we've touched upon, didn't just help him survive unimaginable hardships. It allowed him to emerge with a spirit intact. It wasn't just about making it out alive. It was about living and leading with purpose, with integrity, and with compassion, even in the darkest of times.
And that brings us to a really interesting question. Something I want all of us to ponder as we, really reflect on everything we've talked about today. Something we can carry with us into the next part of our deep dive. It's like that code became his North Star, guiding him through those dark times.
Exactly. It gave him a framework for making decisions, for holding on to who he was, even when everything else felt like it was slipping away.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so powerful about that is that it reminds us that even in the middle of chaos, when things are uncertain, we still have the power to choose how we respond. We can cling to our values, let them guide our actions.
That is a powerful message, especially in a world that can feel, well, kind of crazy sometimes.
Absolutely. And it makes you stop and think, what would my code be? What are those non-negotiables, those guiding principles that give you strength and direction when things get tough?
Ooh, that's a great question. It's easy to talk about values, but Zamperini's story really makes you think about how they actually show up in our lives, in those everyday choices, big or small.
You got it. It's not enough to just think about our values. We have to live them. And what's really interesting is that Zamperini's code wasn't just about these big, dramatic moral stands. It was in everything he did, even in those POW camps.
Oh, right. Didn't the summary mention something about him sharing his rations?
Exactly. He would sneak extra food to prisoners who were weaker, even though it meant he could get punished.
Wow. So even when he had almost nothing, he still found a way to live by that code, to put compassion and empathy first.
It's remarkable, isn't it?
It really shows you how our values aren't just these big ideas. They're supposed to guide everything we do day in and day out.
Exactly. And that's what made those values so powerful for him. It wasn't just about surviving the experience. It was about living with integrity and purpose, no matter how hard things got.
It's like having that unshakable sense of self, of what you stand for. It makes you more resilient when things get tough.
You said it. Because it's not like having strong morals makes all the problems disappear, but it gives you something to hold on to when everything else feels like it's falling apart.
It's that anchor we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And that can be incredibly grounding, especially with all those curveballs life throws our way.
It all connects, doesn't it? This long view, acceptance, hope, a code of ethics, it's what builds resilience. And while Zamperini's story is amazing, those principles are something we can all learn from.
Absolutely. He's giving us a roadmap, really, for how to handle those challenges we all face, big and small.
And I love how he doesn't pretend to have it all figured out. He talks about the struggles, the self-doubt, the times he wanted to just give up.
He was human, just like the rest of us.
Exactly. And that's what makes his resilience so inspiring because it feels attainable. Like, okay, if he can go through all that and come out stronger, maybe I can too.
Absolutely. Because in the end, resilience isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up, dusting yourself off, and finding a way to keep moving forward, even when it's hard.
And sometimes that's all it takes, just remembering that we have that strength within us.
100%. And having a little bit of Zamperini's wisdom tucked away, well, it certainly can't hurt.
Not at all. So as we get ready to wrap up our deep dive into Don't Give Up, Don't Give In.
And what a dive it's been. We've covered so much. Forgiveness, acceptance, breaking down those big challenges, the importance of hope, and that unwavering commitment to a personal code of ethics.
Phew, it's a lot to take in.
It is. But it all points to something truly remarkable about the human spirit. Our ability to not just survive, but to thrive, even in the face of extraordinary hardship.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. Something I want to leave you with as you continue to reflect on everything we've discussed. Something to carry with you as you navigate the ups and downs of your own journey. It's like his code, it wasn't just about him, it was about something bigger.
You're right, it was. It was about holding on to those values that connect us all, even in the toughest situations. Remember how we talk about the importance of community?
Yeah, finding those points of connection, even in the darkest of times.
Exactly. Zamperini's code, it wasn't just about personal survival. It was about something more profound. It was about recognizing our shared humanity, even amidst unimaginable suffering.
And wow, that's a powerful message. Because it suggests that even when everything else is stripped away, we still have a choice. A choice about who we want to be, how we want to treat each other.
It really is about the choices we make.
Yeah.
And in a way, isn't that what resilience is all about? Making the choice to keep going, to choose hope, to choose compassion, even when it's hard.
It's about defining what matters most to us and then living by those principles no matter what life throws our way.
You got it. And I think that's something we can all take away from Zamperini's story. It's a powerful reminder that our values, they aren't just words. They're meant to guide us, to shape our actions, to help us navigate the complexities of life.
It's about having that inner compass.
Exactly. And sometimes that compass, it might lead us down unexpected paths, through challenges we never could have imagined. But if we can hold on to those core values, those things that truly matter, then we give ourselves the best possible chance of not just surviving, but thriving, no matter what comes our way.
It's about becoming the best versions of ourselves, even when faced with the worst of circumstances.
Beautifully said. And on that note, as we reach the end of our deep dive into the extraordinary life and wisdom of Louis Zamperini, I want to leave you with this. What will your don't give up, don't give in story be? What values will guide you? What impact will you choose to have on the world? Those are questions worth pondering. And I have a feeling that Zamperini somewhere is cheering you on every step of the way.
That's a powerful thought. Zamperini's spirit lives on, inspiring us to embrace resilience, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to living a life of purpose. This has been an incredible deep dive. Thanks for joining us.